I want to welcome you to this speaker series tonight, Active Knox Speaker Series, featuring a panel of local activists and educators. It's certainly a pleasure to have you here. Couple of the usual housekeeping things. If there's an emergency, leave, just out that door. If you go out there and turn to the left, you'll see a door at the end of the hallway, and you can just zap right on out there. For other needs, you can go out that door and turn to the left and make another left, and there are a couple of rooms on the right with labels for the appropriate thing, including, by the way, those are also tornado shelters, should you need one of those tonight. They're both labeled as tornado shelters, just a little fact. Now, if you're familiar with these speaker series that we've been doing for some time now, you know that we usually feature a speaker from outside our region who shares what they've been doing in their communities. And many times it's just amazing stuff that they've been doing. But usually what happens after that, people come up to us and say, that's nice, what about here? How do we do this here? So this time we're going to dispense with the outside folks and bring some folks in who can talk about how we can, in our own communities, make things more walkable, more equitable, and healthier. And we're going to take a break from the outside speakers to hear from those who are local, and we hope you'll draw some inspiration from their stories. This event is sponsored by Active Knox, a collaboration of organizations working together to build healthy communities by design. Active Knox includes AARP, Bike Walk Knoxville, the Knoxville Chamber, the Knoxville Track Club, Legacy Parks Foundation, the Knoxville Area Association of Realtors, East Tennessee Quality Growth, Knox County Schools, the University of Tennessee, and Knox County Planning. Great coalition of folks working to make things better here in Knoxville and Knox County. The group is committed to sharing innovative and proven ideas that can help make Knoxville, Knox County, and our region a more active, engaging, and economically vibrant place to live, work, and play. And now, I would like to bring up our moderator for today, Christy Altman, who will introduce our panelists. Christy?
I think Don's a lot funnier than I am. And I've been in the sun all day, so he's definitely funnier than I am right now. But thank you, and thanks to all of you for taking the time to join us today for the Active Knox Speaker Series. I'm really excited to be here this evening. I have a great passion for cycling, walking, running in our community, and have been interested in making this a safer place for many, many years. I did 2 different tenures as the executive director for the Knoxville Track Club, and was also on the Community Health Council for about 9.5 years, and part of the group with the last Community Health Improvement Plan, where we came up with the concept of the Active Knox Speaker Series. And so Ellen has taken that and run with it, and it's been amazing. And so I'm just happy to be back and part of this evening. So as I get older, I need glasses to drive and to see far, but I can't use them to read. So I didn't see anybody sneak in, but did any elected officials sneak in this evening? I didn't think so, but I wanted to be sure that we recognized them if they were here. So first up tonight, we're going to hear from Dr. Christopher Cherry. Chris is a professor at the University of Tennessee in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. His research interests include bicycle and pedestrian safety and system design, the role of e-bikes, micromobility, and other emerging technologies on the transportation system, and multimodal transportation planning and economics. Following Chris is going to be Brian William Hill. Brian is a certified community planner here in Knoxville, and since nearly losing his life in a bicycle-automobile collision, he has made bicycle and pedestrian safety a connectivity a cornerstone of his career. He serves on the Bike Walk Knoxville's Advisory Committee, the Broadway Corridor Task Force, and the Uptown North Branding Committee. Finally, this evening, we'll hear from Tanisha Fitzgerald Baker. Tanisha is the College and Career Access Team Leader for Project Grad Knoxville. She is a founding member and current president of 5 Points Up Community Action Group, founding member of East Knox Lions Club, member of the Eastside Sunday Markets Planning Committee, and serves on the Knoxville's Public Arts Committee. So Chris is going to be first, and then we'll go right into Brian and then Tanisha, and then we'll do questions at the very end. So let's welcome Chris on up to the stage.
Okay, thank you for having me, and I'm really excited to address this audience, and these are my hometown people, and this is where I hope that I can help influence change over time as we go along, and make Knoxville better for everyone. So, as mentioned, thank you very much. I'm Chris Cherry. I'm a professor in civil engineering. I've been here since about 2007, since exactly 2007, and have enjoyed my time living in Knoxville since. I've raised my family here, and I'll show you a couple quick pictures as we go along, and they're relevant, not just pictures of my kids, okay? First things first is, well, the title, I don't know, I just sort of threw a bunch of words together, I felt like, but the idea here that I'm aiming at is, look around. There's a lot of infrastructure in Knoxville that's old, it's falling apart. We're going to hear a little bit about that as we go along through this process, through these talks. And the question is, how can we retrofit some of the infrastructure that we have in a way that we don't have to wait for the rest of our lives to see it, and we can hopefully, in the process, save lives as we go along, okay? So here's the map that Ellen and others have put together. That's just great. I just love this. It's great and terrible at the same time. These are the pedestrian injuries, fatalities that have occurred across this neighborhood. This isn't like, we're on this map, kind of top middle right there, okay? So downtown's in the bottom left, and you can see these pedestrian and bicycle crashes throughout. They're just scattered throughout as if they're completely random. And so if I were gonna ask the engineer in the room, where's Jim? Jim, where would you fix first? That's a hard question. That's a trick question, okay? It's really hard to pinpoint how you would prioritize projects, and we've worked with TDOT on research on this and so on. And so the big challenge for us is how do we work on quick fixes a little bit more that really tackle this issue. We'll hear all about the Vision Zero in a little bit, so I'm not going to get into that too much, but we need some urgency and we need scale. I think that's the key aspect here, because this map repeats every couple of years, or every, in a few years, you can have another map just like that, all different people that were injured and killed walking around this neighborhood, okay? And they're alive now, they don't know it, right? So this is when I look to people that are focusing on safety. They say they're saving people's lives and they don't even know it, okay? So think of that. All right, so I'm going to walk through this concept a little bit, and this is this idea of, instead of this multi-year, maybe multi-decade design process, there's been an urgency in the last maybe 5 years of how do we do these so-called quick fixes, quick builds. This is People for Bikes put out this document. There's several others that kind of have the same theme. This one has some nicer graphics and they also have a nice picture of Memphis I'll show you in a minute. But the idea is you start small, you start modest, you say, let's try something on this left panel here, right? Let's try a protected bike lane down Magnolia Avenue. I don't know, pick one. And then you let that go for a day or two, and then you say, well, let's try piloting that. And eventually you work your way over to a full-fledged design. And this contrasts the typical kind of engineering design approach that we've employed in major infrastructure projects, where you spend years working through design, environmental impacts, and so on, and then eventually you say, this is our design, we're going to spend our millions, we're going to fix it all at once, and if we make some mistakes, if demographics change, if vehicle technology changes, hopefully we thought of that 10 years ago when we conceived the project, and of course that's a really difficult thing to do, okay? So the tools are becoming available to think through these projects in this way. Knoxville has done a lot of this work. It's really exciting to see how they've adopted a lot of different approaches. I'll show one approach that they've done as a kind of the big project example, but Central Avenue is a good example of one of their, you could say, pilot interim design projects that's ultimately become something more permanent, learned along the way, said that thing doesn't work. So good thing we didn't pour it in concrete, we only painted it, and now we'll pour it in concrete right, okay? Okay, so it's not only a New York City thing, and so this is a picture. This top left picture is from that report, and this is Memphis, Monroe and Marshall Street in Memphis, and they had this big, massive street, and they went in there with paint. They went. It's almost as if they went to Home Depot and the pallet shop and grabbed some plants, and before you know it, you have something that's resembling a more livable street than their original street. The one on the bottom right is what it is today. Instead of Home Depot pots, those are more resilient pots, and you can go to Memphis and see a lot of these sorts of designs sprinkled throughout their city. I'm not saying Memphis is a panacea for walking and biking, but they've employed a lot of these. So let's get to Knoxville. So this is, who recognizes this neighborhood? Anybody recognize it? Down the block, this is what's that?
Is it turn off the rubbish?
Yeah, yep. So this is a lot of asphalt, and this is East Knox here. Burlington? Yeah, got it. Okay, thanks. And so there's an initiative to revitalize this area, but it's really a hostile area for anybody. Really, I mean, look at all that asphalt. It's just a massive amount of asphalt, big crossings, interchanges, and so on. A lot of high-speed traffic, and so you think about the amount of work it would take to do a full-fledged civil construction rebuild of this entire multi-square block area, and it would be economically, it would suck all of the budget for that year for the city. Okay. But there are some of these quick fixes. Just you see these weird skewed intersections where there's all this blank space, and part of what this initiative is to reorient that place to a pedestrian scale. So you can see this as like a canvas that you can play with and you can work with, and you can say, okay, we're going to turn that weird triangle over on the right instead of just a vast asphalt space. We're going to dig up all that concrete. They have this notion called depaving the city, right? We're going to dig all that up and turn it into a little park or a place to eat or a playground or something else, okay? Or just leave it concrete for a while, put a playground on it and see what happens, okay? So those are the types of things. This is the canvas that I want you all to sort of think about as we move forward, okay? So here's my kid pictures, all right? This is an awesome project. I love Cumberland Avenue, okay? I think that it was one of the things that really got me excited when I moved to Knoxville in August 2007. First kind of professionals I met were Ellen and Kelly and Jeff Welch at the Sunspot right there. I met Ellen, I think, standing on the curb saying, "Why are you locking your bike up so hard?" And it's like, I came from the Bay Area. If you didn't lock everything on, it would sort of get dismantled in front of you. And so she's like, yeah, people don't steal bikes really much here, you know. So anyways, I met Ellen there in 2007. What did we talk about? We talked about what happened in 2017. Okay, so we were talking about this vision and plans. It wasn't just a vision. I mean, there was a document, there was plans and so on of that down there, that mile-ish stretch of roadway, probably less than a mile, okay? And this is what happened in my life over that same exact time. I said, well, how do I scale this in kind of human terms? I said, that's me moving into my house, and there's my Tennessee shirt, my first and I think only Tennessee shirt I ever bought. And there's my kids, my little baby kids, okay? And then when the thing happened a decade later, my kids never got to experience Cumberland Avenue as a walkable place as young children, okay? And I also had a couple other children on the way. So those two girls in the back, they grew up in the span of building this one project. So think about all the projects in this neighborhood and think about how can we transform the neighborhood in a span of time that we measure not in human life timeline, okay? Like, we shouldn't have to rebuild our neighborhood for our grandchildren. We should rebuild it for our children, okay? Think about that as we go forward, okay? All right, so back still in Knoxville, a couple small demonstrations, okay? Small demonstrations matter. This is the whole mantra of this so-called tactical urbanism or small builds process. So this is one of the maybe the third or fourth open streets that they had. This is over in West Knox off Sutherland. And I was tasked with a so-called better block. So we got straw bales, we got Ace. Ace is the place. They've loaned us all kinds of mums and straw bales, and Mayo helped, and other places. And we just set it up in an hour. We striped it with tape. We put, that's not paint, that's cornstarch that washed away in the first rain, and just set this thing up so that you could still function as a street. It was technically closed, but it could have been open, and it was a very kind of comfortable place to be because there was no way as a driver you could have driven safely or unsafely more than 10 miles an hour on that street. I mean, it was fully calmed. It wasn't permanent, but it was calmed, okay? And this is a good way to overcome some of the fear of traffic calming, for example, okay? Where you get this neighborhood association saying, oh my gosh, that's gonna change everything. It doesn't change everything, okay? All right, a couple others. I'll show these quick. I showed these last time to probably a few of the same people. Give me shelter, Kat. Where are you? There you. Okay, yeah. So this is another project. This is what this is on Cumberland Avenue. Big open space, very busy bus stop. 2015. You can put a shelter in pretty easily. But the bureaucracy and the red tape is the challenge, right? You have different people owning property. I've spoken with y'all a lot about this. And in fact, this is what it is today after it's removed. So it's prettier, it's got a shinier sign, it's got brick facade, but it still has no shelter. And in fact, one of our mayoral candidates has kind of stood on the post and said, let's get to basics. I saw this ad, we're gonna do bus stops, okay? And bus stops are a mayoral campaign platform, which is pretty cool and interesting, I guess, okay? And part of that is how do you cut through some of the challenges of institutions, okay? All of this is institutions and challenging some of those things, okay? Another one, big, vast intersection right by campus, thousands of pedestrians walking through this every day. You can see the bottom left before, and then a interim try of a solution on the top right, where you kind of shorten those distances that pedestrians have to be exposed out in the intersection and so on, okay? So this is all food for thought. These are thinking about this stuff, okay? This is all cheap materials. You find here that you make a mistake, you didn't design the curve right. You don't have to go back and rip out asphalt, and you're not causing issues, okay? So this is the motivation. This is the flow chart process, and we went through this process with our neighborhood for speed humps, and it worked actually. It turns out that common sense prevailed, and the road that our neighborhood voted on getting speed humps was not really having a traffic calming problem. But I think all the engineers knew that. They went through the process anyway. So this is a multi-year process generally to get a traffic circle or a speed hump or something like that. And this is a spot treatment. Again, look at that big map. Say, where would you put traffic circles? Where would you put speed humps? How do you address this problem systematically in a better way? Okay. So, learning from others. This is Barcelona. They built these super blocks. They're called super IAs, and they basically make these kind of neighborhood courts. They use the streets still for cars. You can still drive through a lot of these. You see cars parked there. You can see the arrows where the vehicles are allowed to drive around this park that's right in the middle of an intersection, a big intersection. They put a playground structure in there. This side over here, they put easels. You can paint in the middle of the road if you want to. It's like a 5-mile-an-hour design speed for vehicles, okay? And this is all paint, bollards, park benches and other things. This is not massive infrastructure changes. And they did this all they did this massive transformation of these neighborhoods in the span of a year or so, okay? All right, so don't read this, okay? But this is that People for Bikes quick guide, and this is what they say you need, okay? So you can kind of pick through these bullets on the left. You need a team, you need a good contracting plan that's not your typical multi-year contracting plan. You need so this is where the city staff and officials and the elected officials come together and say, how are we going to develop a system that works in this context, okay? Budgets are tight. Scanning the Knoxville budget, this is what you find. $200,000 for traffic calming, which was a big increase this year, but that's still nothing. I mean, that still creates multi-year backlogs with the existing type of projects. 1.45 million for sidewalks. Again, a lot of this is like order of magnitude bigger than a few years ago when I moved here, so it's pretty awesome. 1.2 for greenways, 250K for bike improvements. And then, 200,000 for paving parking lots, 5.8 million for repaving roads. So you think about how much money is invested, and this stuff up on top is kind of noise. I don't know. I don't think we have a budget. Jim can maybe help answer this. Do we have a budget for repaving? Do we have a cycle to say every so many years we're going to repave every greenway mile?
Actually, the parking lot budget is all public facilities, so it's not just parking lots, it's alleys, it's greenways.
Okay.
As requested by the departments.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. All right. So I appreciate that. So anyways, here's this little, I promised a sign. So this is like a yard sign for a political candidate that we're all starting to see pop up. It's that same material. It's a couple bucks. And this is a so-called tactical urbanism wayfinding. We went through a wayfinding program a few years ago here in Knoxville. It was a big I don't know, was it a multi-year process? It was a process, a long process to figure out how to point pedestrians in the right way. This is a less permanent process that you can get up in the span of time that you can put a yard sign in your yard for your favorite political candidate. So that's an interesting way to tell people how to get safely from A to B and so on. Okay, so there's the reading list, and with that, I'll transition. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Chris, thank you for that great overview of some of the strategies that are available to us. These tools already at our disposal. What we need is the imperative. We need to politically and socially mobilize to create safer streets. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is Vision Zero. Vision Zero is an international grassroots campaign. It started in Sweden in 1997, and since then it has decreased fatalities and serious injuries on their roadways by 50%. It first came to the US in 2014 in New York City and has spread to cities across the US. In 2017, there were over 20 Vision Zero cities. By 2019, there were over 40. So this is happening now. So what's the imperative? In Tennessee, there are over 1,000 roadway deaths per year. In Knox County, there is one or more traffic deaths per week. There are 9 bike ped injuries or deaths per month. And I want to highlight that an alarming number of these are children of the elderly. Over the last 5 years, looking at the traffic data that Chris illustrated that the TPO has collected, 1 in 5 people injured or killed in a bike ped traffic collision was either a child or the elderly. So it's pretty significant. What we know, while only 2% of collisions involve pedestrians and bicyclists, they make up 24% of fatalities. And then as speed goes up, the danger of severe injuries or fatalities increases exponentially. So Vision Zero provides a new approach. It provides a different way of looking at traffic safety. First, it starts with the premise that deaths and serious injuries are preventable. People make mistakes. That shouldn't result in death. That shouldn't result in serious injury. We need a system that is forgiving and redundant. Vision Zero provides a systematic approach. It provides a set of tools for looking at, where are the high-risk locations? Who are the profiles? Who's being hit? What are the demographics of those being hit? What are the toolkits that are available to us? And how can we all work together towards this one priority? That brings me to the next point. Vision Zero is data-driven. By setting a goal of 0 and a certain date, communities are able to work towards that effectively, and they're able to actually measure strategies, tools, things that they do, policies. They're able to measure their effectiveness by that metric. Finally, Vision Zero is inclusive. Now, this is really an important one. If communities are going to have sustained action, they need to engage the vulnerable populations. They need to engage the road users, all of them. And while an inordinate number of those who are killed or seriously injured on our roadways are bicyclists or pedestrians, we all need to be brought together to come up with solutions. The policymakers, the city staff, the residents, the businesses, all of us need to work together because this is an imperative and it's now. Vision Zero campaigns have been spreading across the country. Like I said, you can see here on this map, there are no Vision Zero declared cities here in Tennessee, but there are several that are attempts that are being made right now, and I'll go over that in just a few slides down the way. But there are over 43 designated Vision Zero cities spanning from coast to coast. They are both small and large. Some have more rural characteristics than others, so it's not just designated to wealthy coastal cities. It's been very effective, as some of these numbers show. In some of the major cities that have been early adopters and have tracked their data, you see 30 to 40% decreases in fatalities and serious injuries. So this is a really significant effort that's being made. So how do we achieve Vision Zero? What do we do? It starts with political commitment. And this is where we all need to come together to pressure our elected officials, in particular our highest elected officials, to come to the forefront and say, we commit to Vision Zero, we commit to zero deaths and serious injuries. That needs to be done by the highest elected official for a few reasons. They have the ability to set policy agendas. They have the ability to bring more people to the table and to continually provide motivation for all of the players involved. They also will put together a steering committee. A steering committee would involve those working for the city, would involve the elected officials, it would involve representatives representing those who are underserved or those who are particularly vulnerable, who may be suffering from an inordinate number of the severe injuries and fatalities. And that steering committee has a chief goal of creating an action plan. Now, the action plan guides the steps to Vision Zero. The action plan is extremely imperative. And what it does is it brings together all of the different policy solutions by targeting, first of all, where are the high collision areas, where are the places that are most dangerous in our city. Once you identify those intersections and roadway segments, you're able to come up with safety solutions that involve engineering, education, enforcement. But all of these are working under that one umbrella of Vision Zero, getting to zero deaths. And you will have a data-based approach where you can measure each thing as you go and keep us accountable. As I mentioned before, equity and engagement are extremely important. And then roadway design and speed. That's kind of the golden goose of traffic safety, getting people to slow down and pay more attention. So what's happening now? Bike Walk Knoxville has been leading a lot of efforts. We have been talking with the current administration, city staff, to try to understand their staff capacity to carry out a Vision Zero campaign. We have also been asking for their official commitment, statement of support for Vision Zero. We've been talking to elected candidates for the coming mayoral election, and we've gotten several of them to officially state that they support Vision Zero and will form a steering committee and action plan once elected. So this is big news. And then we have been engaging the public. We haven't gotten too far down the road here, but there's some steam behind this. We were presenting at had a booth at the neighborhood conference this last week, where in just a few short hours, we got nearly 60 signatures from 25 neighborhood organizations around the city. So there's some significant momentum behind this and support. Nashville and Memphis are two other cities. I mentioned there are other cities around the state who are trying to bring together a Vision Zero campaign. And there are a number of efforts that they have already enacted to that end. So what can you do? How do you want to get involved? There are a lot of cities around the country that are doing this. As I mentioned, 43. Not all of them have solutions that are going to work. Here in Knoxville, sometimes things that work in, say, Seattle or New York City will not work the same way here in Knoxville. So you can look to comparative cities, places like Columbia, Missouri, that have developed a Vision Zero campaign. There are also some national organizations that provide support for Vision Zero. There's the Vision Zero Network provides sort of training and outreach for Vision Zero cities. There's the Road to Zero Coalition, and there's Towards Zero Deaths. Towards Zero Deaths is the National Federal Highway Administration's effort towards Vision Zero. You can support Vision Zero Knoxville here in Knoxville. There's a web link at the bottom of this page. You can go there. That's Bike Walk Knoxville's official statement of support. We would love you to go to that page and add your name saying that you officially support Vision Zero. And if you'd like to volunteer, please speak to me, because we can use all the help we can get. This is an imperative, and this is now. And it's important for our city, it's important for equity, it's important for our future. And to that end, I would like to invite Tanisha up to give us a little bit more background on how we can help our community here in the East Side.
And where I actually fit based on my experiences and my passions and what I'm concerned about. And I started thinking about the lack of access to opportunities for focuses on a healthy lifestyle. So let me say this first, let me put this out here. The whole "and educator" piece is me. All of my slides are gonna look like a bulletin board, because that's, we're near the end of the year, and that's just kind of how I arrange things. So I hope they're not too distracting. But as we discuss safe neighborhoods, walkable, bikeable spaces, and access to healthy living, which I'm assuming we're going to include exercise, we're going to include a focus on healthy choices. I primarily support through my work with Project Grant Knoxville, so I'm serving a lot of the families and youth in this area. Also, as mentioned, president of 5 Points Up, which is a couple of blocks over, and I found it on your map. It was one of those intersections that I saw a lot of accidents had occurred. And so that actual 5 Points Up was started through the health department, so that they could bring together a group of community members, and we did a SWOT analysis, and we started thinking about what issues are of concern. From the voice of the community, what do we want to talk about, or what do we want to highlight? One of those things, and I'm going to share a little bit about, is being a food desert. And the other issue actually was safe and walkable areas. So my big question that I want you to think about as I proceed is, does it really matter where you live? So when we think about Vision Zero, when we think about the quick fixes of the infrastructure in this particular city, does it matter where you live? So we're in 37915, and what I've noticed, I do something called Unzip the Zip Code. And it's pretty much a zip code analysis. And I look at certain patterns or trends across zip codes. And to make it easy for me, I've learned to kind of describe them using 4 E's: education, ethnicity, economics, and employment. So 37915, you can see a very low median income, relatively small population, and then there are some other trends. 50% of the individuals below poverty, and I'll also add that this particular zip code has low automobile ownership. So you have a lot of people who really need to depend on walking, if not walking to the location, at least to the bus stop, or for some mode of transportation. So this is 37915, and where we are now. We said, well, let's go way on over to 37922. And you can see the median income. Did you remember the first one? 17? Oops. And then 101. That's a big difference. That's a big difference to access and opportunity, experiences, and exposures. And one of the things that we may be lacking is information. But the reason to even bring this in is because you have different priorities based on your economic status. So if you're economically inferior, or you're in an area of concentrated poverty, you may not think as much about healthy foods, you're just thinking, I need to eat. You're not thinking about safe travel, you're thinking, I need to get from point A to point B. And so I was also looking, and I did a presentation with Dr. Brown at the University of Tennessee, and she shared this life expectancy. Now, I hadn't moved yet. I live in 37915, and as I get closer to 69, I'm thinking about scooting on down to 37923. But that when she shared that with me, I thought, wow, am I doing anything that much different than a whole nother zip code? And then I start thinking about the kids I see every day, like, they're already predestined to have a shorter life expectancy because they're in this neighborhood. And so I'm thinking, why? So here are some things to think about zip code when we say, where you live doesn't matter. Your zip code is a better predictor of health than genetic code. Odds for student success can be determined by zip code. Access to retail and foods based on zip code, we can talk about that. And then the variety and amount of experiences are linked to your zip code. So you may ask students or youth or family what they care about. They might not, think about a walkable space or bikeable space. It hasn't hit them like, this is something I should really care about for my community because they haven't had those experiences. So if they have never had a walkable or bikeable space, they don't know to say, yeah, we want this in our zip code as well. So what are the challenges? Safe streets, walkable neighborhoods, opportunities for healthy lifestyles, and access to fresh foods. So when we think about safe streets, I found some definitions because I wanted to say, well, what are other people saying? I'm just like, want to get in my house, not hear gunfire, want to see some lights, have continuous sidewalks, that type of thing. But I do have that. And then I thought about appealing recreational activities. I started off with, we need some places for recreation. But then I thought, appealing recreation, places we would want to go. And so I wanted to put before you, as we look for solutions and ways to incorporate all these ideas, as we continue to have these conversations and an effort to collaborate. These are the challenges as I see it in this particular area, and there are other areas that face these challenges. I'm just more familiar with this in 37915. So talking about the food desert, I was saying, well, how does that fit? Well, this really has a lot to do with health and wanting healthy living, or seeing that as a priority. So neighborhoods without ready access to fresh, healthy, and affordable food. It's a food desert. You're in a food desert right now, okay? The USDA says a food desert is an area that does not have a grocery store within at least 1 mile. But hey, that might be being greedy. Let's just say if it were 3 miles or 4 miles from here, you would still be in a food desert, okay? And so I think about the scenario of a family trying to get to the grocery store, and especially if they're catching the bus, don't bring a little one. You got to go grocery shopping, get all that food and your little one back on the bus, and then walk to your home. And it's the distance that makes us a food desert. And so just this morning, this isn't a part of my presentation, but I want to share, I had stopped to the Dollar General store, which is a local store here. And a young girl had come in and she got 2 bags of chips, and it's like 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, well, she's starting early. So the lady at the register said her mom sends her here every morning for breakfast. And I said, the chips? And she said, yes. And I said, very interesting. But it made me think about this discussion today that this girl goes to the dollar store every morning for breakfast and picks chips. Now they have other choices, Pop-Tarts, Little Debbie cakes, cereal or whatever. But that was interesting. So we talked about Pastor Chris Battle and me being a part of the Eastside Sunday Market, which is a farmer's market in East Knoxville. It's the only one. And I'm going to try to speed up because I know we need some questions. But I wanted to share a quote from the article here. Many residents have unreliable transportation and must stretch a dime to feed their families. The closest grocery stores with fresh fruits and vegetables are at least 2.5 miles away. Okay, so food deserts and food insecurity have broad impacts on society because they're linked to chronic disease, public health officials say. I didn't say it. Those public health officials said it. And so we talked about walkability. And I needed to define that. Because I said, well, we walk, so it's walkable. But not really. A neighborhood's walkability is the degree to which it is safe, designated areas for people to walk or bike to work, dining, shopping, and so forth. So I'm thinking about how many times if I wanted to walk from point A to B that I would have to cross the street because of the lack of continuous sidewalks, debris, lighting, or whatnot. And then safety. So a lot of our conversation is about safety and what's a safe neighborhood. Like I said, to me, just want to go in, know that my family's going to be safe, we can continue with our lives, play in the yard, that type of thing. Places where walking and cycling are safe and convenient. So I used to walk, I know you can't tell, I'm going to get back on track, but I used to walk very often, but I had to drive, and I drove to Holston Park because that was the closest appealing space for me to walk. And so convenience is a big word here. Nutritious, fresh, culturally appropriate food. So all of my immediate quick, I'm tired, I work 12 hours, I need to grab something, it's either fast food or at the corner market, where I can get my fried pork sandwich, pork chop sandwich, I can get a fried fish sandwich, hamburger, steak in a sack, and that type of thing. All around that. You need a stack, you grab a little Debbie cake. And so I started thinking about, well, wow, we have almost built a habit that is in contrast to what we want. So it does matter when we look at these initiatives and these zip codes of how we inform and create a new set of priorities for the residents. And then residents aren't exposed to environmental hazards or pollutants that endanger their present or future health or well-being. So I think when we talk about the quick fixes, that seemed very appealing because I'm like, oh, we can put a pot here, a pole here, paint here, and so that all makes sense to me. As I finish, I'd like to share some possible solutions in talking with members of the community. Increased lighting. Now, I don't know how much all of this costs. I'm not saying we need to all stand outside with flashlights, but I think that if we had increased lighting, I know I personally would feel safer. More trash receptacles. Now, I did drive this, and I drove from one end of Magnolia in the parallel street to Martin Luther King, probably about from there to Austin East. So if you went from here to Austin East, you wouldn't see any trash receptacles on the street where the kids walk. So, because I'm feeling like, why do I do an East Knoxville cleanup? And it's really pretty for a couple of days, and then not. But we bring in garbage cans, and so I can see why, not that there's an excuse, but there's nowhere to put the trash if you're walking. An inner city grocery store, they tried it, didn't work, but we need one. So I looked up some ideas you'll see about mobile markets, farmer markets. Dr. Chris shared an idea with me, the produce, the imperfect produce. So just different ways to put fresh produce in healthier choices. Sidewalk construction or repairs. Don't know the cycle, but for a very long time, we have needed some repairs on our sidewalks. Increased access to health foods and healthy foods, more video surveillance cameras, which is proven to curb violence in a lot of cities. Just to know the possibility of you being on camera, it's very powerful. And then widespread information on nutrition and benefits of healthy living. So that's all I have, and thank you for inviting me.
Would we get anywhere by suing the city? So I'll start. I'm gonna look at you first because you've had the accident. So we're gonna start with you. You have answers.
Thank you for putting me in the spotlight. We might, but I think that we need to have a broader imperative that looks at the whole system. You may get an improvement to an individual intersection. That's not going to provide the sort of widespread systemic change that we need that looks at all of the systems that we're working with, education, enforcement, engineering, not just trying to create solutions, but actually having the resources there to actually make it a long-term priority. I don't know that in itself would be a solution. Yes.
People see this all the time. And
First of all, in transportation engineering, there's very few specifications and manuals. They're all policy design documents. And half of the things that are sort of policy are not evidence-based. They're based on what we've done for years and years, and they sort of have worked. But I don't know, if you count 40,000 people dying every year, they're not really working that well. And so the challenge is, how do you break out of the risk liability oriented framework, which a lot of civil engineers are stuck in? Because in all of those guidance books, they all say, apply your engineering judgment, okay? And you need to be able to say, this engineering judgment is better than whatever. This intersection kill is obviously not safe enough, but it meets some standard. So I applied some engineering judgment to make it safer. Still killed somebody. You need to be able to say that on the stand, I guess, as you're getting sued. And that's one of the real challenges, because engineers don't like to, nobody likes to get sued, I don't think. But I think in terms of in terms of speaking the languages that an engineer may react to, though, I have different opinions about liability and risk versus safety, which are two different things.
Question or comment?
Yes, the three presentations were very interesting, and what I liked about them is they offered solutions. But I find that the presentations all were in a reactive mode. And I wonder if there's any organization in the city that has looked at school location, level of service on the road, and time of day, week, so that you can be more proactive.
I'm not aware of in this city right now of anything of that nature. However, as I mentioned, there are other Vision Zero efforts being made across Tennessee, and in Nashville. Walk Bike Nashville did a report, I believe it was in 2015, called Impossible Crossings, and Impossible Crossings looked at where were the location and the type of collisions in each, where they occurred throughout the city. And then they actually went on to, after having identified those collisions and the type of collisions that they went on and they assigned those to each district for the representatives across the city. And those council representatives were sent letters saying, here's the problem in your community, what are you going to do about it? And they have combined that with a platform, a political platform that brings together many different stakeholders from across the city in their upcoming mayoral and council elections to really make this a proactive issue.
We have a couple new schools coming down the line right now in the county budget, right? And I don't know if I think they probably think about the site design and they say, okay, the school's going to be here, so we need to make sure that that intersection has got a crosswalk or whatever else. But there's a lot of schools that don't have access to the neighborhood behind them. My daughter's Bearden Elementary, you have people driving literally from the apartments that are within inside of the school into school. And then the idea, though, is we don't have safety generally explicitly included in, you could say, long range or larger transportation planning models. It's almost always a very project-oriented thing. We're working on a project right now where we're trying to say, for example, with the Nashville Light Rail project, nobody really said doing this scenario would kill 30 more people than doing this scenario every year or two or whatever it would be. That was never part of the equation. It was always dollars and cents. And I think that that's an important contribution. We generate trips, we do all this other stuff. We need to generate crashes with our decisions too and try to understand that.
Next more specific, hold of the level of service matters. And does the city county take traffic counts? Do they have a traffic count schedule? Do you have a level of service matters in the city or the county? Or the transportation organization?
I know that TDOT puts TDOT, but yeah, probably just as well. But TDOT does have a traffic map that has where they've had all the traffic counters that they update regularly, and so you can see the traffic along intersections and roadway segments, and you could overlay that with collisions and even the location of schools. Jim, do you or Ellen want to?
TPO has a better map. It includes all the TDOT sites, but it also includes some of their counts and some of our counts. Level of service is not routinely calculated, except unless you're doing a quarters.
Yeah, I'm not part of the panel. I'm supposed to be behind the scenes, but yeah, I serve on the staff at the TPO, and we do have a public map on our page through knoxtpo.org, our new website, new domain, with counts from the city and the county and TDOT. But you're getting to your question about schools and point about new schools coming down the pike in Knox County. That's coordinating that and getting walkability into the mix of that is really important. It's really challenging because I've met with the school facilities folks and they're looking at everything but pretty much walkability. They're looking at land costs and car access and bus access and things like that. But walkability really isn't on the radar a whole lot with Knox County schools. We're trying to get it to be. So there's a lot of work to do.
So in the last probably year and a half, and we're at Rocky Hill Elementary School, so unless you live right across the street, that's the only way to get there. It's similar to you, there's a neighborhood right behind. The kids can't walk to school. They still have to get in line and do the car lobby. But in the last probably year and a half, they've been there. On Ebenezer, these crosswalks have been placed across the road so that if a family wanted to walk to to that elementary school, they could actually do that. Same thing, I see this on the weekends a lot where they've added these, is that people are crossing the road and using the sidewalks for running or biking. You see kids coming back and forth. I know some of the neighbors there aren't fond of the way that they look, but personally, I think that they're amazing because you're allowing those folks to go back and forth. You can get across the street, and then from there, you can actually go up North Shore towards Kroger, and you're right there within a walk or ride zone that would be a usable, easy distance. So that's one of the things that I've seen that has been an improvement. So my hope is that in the future, we see some more of those coming down in the city and in the county so that we can get back and forth to school a little easier. Yes, sir.
So I'm very glad you brought up the Rocky Hill area because that happens to be my homeland. And Lakeshore Park, a couple miles down the road, completely inaccessible. And the master plan, which is currently being reworked, originally had tons of parking spaces so that people who live a mile away can go drive there and run for 3 miles. So kind of to your point about Greenway inequality, I'd love to know the number of miles that are available in each one of those zip codes. And I kind of want to maybe extract not a perfectly crystallized question, but we have a tendency to want to put greenways in the most aesthetic spaces, which are where the most expensive homes are. So as part of the county corridor study, and I know some people here are probably involved, the first priority segment was from the cove to the roundabout, where there's probably 400 people that make $1 million, $500,000 a year. So what goals, what efforts, what can we do to sort of promote and encourage more transportation oriented greenways for the normal folks?
Tanisha, do you want to talk about?
So going back to the voices of the community, without informing them about, this is not a conversation. When I was first brought in, I thought, what am I going to talk about? It's not a conversation that's familiar. And the information that was shared is not easily accessible. So typically, you'd have community members say, this is what we want. We noticed this in this area and we want it too. But what I find is that we don't know we need it or we don't know to want it. And so hopefully, as we bring conversations like this in the community and spread, but people outside of the community can share the message as well. Like, hey, I was over in East Knoxville and this happened, or, I noticed if you went for a walk, you could go so many yards, you'd have to cross the street, then maybe you could go a little further, have to cross the street. And so I think we need help sharing that message. But again, it's so many factors that trickle into that. When I unzip the zip codes, you're looking at employment. You have an area where half the people are unemployed. Half. you know, and so they're just different priorities. But I think that what they're missing is understanding what it is to be healthy. Because we think of food, shelter, water, got it, I'm good. When really it's food, shelter, water, the feeling of belonging, the feeling of safety, rest, and so it's many other things that I don't think they think about. And so I think, and I was very pleased to be invited. After I figured out why I was here, I was very pleased to be a part of this conversation.
Sam?
My question is about the food desert. So I live in a lower income population in my neighborhood, and it's got some sidewalks and some of the part of the area, a lot not. So my question would be is how do we bring in or have some sort of outside the box ideas and bring more healthy choices into the neighborhoods that aren't able to drive somewhere and maybe not able to walk somewhere, but help get the food desert area.
So one thing about being labeled as a food desert, it is very hard to change that label. It doesn't matter how many community gardens or farmers markets, we're still going to be a food desert unless someone puts a grocery store here for an extended amount of time. Because we had one maybe for a year or two, but it couldn't compete. And so it didn't sustain. But when I think about the community garden concept, the farmers markets, possibly a mobile market. We have a lot of food trucks. Maybe one of the food trucks could have produce. Now I know at our farmers market, we try to arrange rides for some of our senior citizens. So maybe we could get a trolley service or some church vans and help bring people so they know every Sunday at 1 o'clock I can go get my fresh fruits and vegetables. Those are just and they seem out of the box just because we're not doing them, but they seem to me relatively easy or quick fixes to just, if we can't get them to the store, can we bring things that are in the store to them? So that's what we're thinking.
Yeah, kind of on a similar idea, but different topic.
Yeah, I mean, that's, Jim's exactly right. I mean, it's easy for me to say, yeah, you can just pop up these little plastic knockdowns and you're solved, but you get into the issues of maintenance and intersections are tough. There's been a little bit of pushback against some of the early research that showed that they're just dangerous, so therefore that created like a couple of decades of inaction on them in the United States, whereas Europe and other places kind of kept going forward with them and has seen this increase in safety and so on. Intersections are really the dangerous spot, but in the meantime, as you're riding down, you're feeling cars kind of blowing by you. That creates this kind of this sense in you that I'm not where I'm supposed to be, I'm doing something dangerous, whatever, and that ultimately diminishes more people on streets. So anyways, yeah, I'm a big fan of protected, separated bike lanes. It takes a little bit of startup cost to get them on, but they need to be visible at the you as a rider need to be visible at the intersection, at the approach. That's key, I think, and that's one of the challenges with like cars parked, like car separated bike lanes where you have cars parked and then the bike lane, as you may pop out and there you are. Back to Vision Zero, if speeds are low, then this is the consequence of the action is not as detrimental. You were hit, you told me, at 40-something miles an hour, which is a place that you should never be hit in a city, I think. Okay.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Thanks for all three of you. They're very good. Let me make a comment. We need people like Helen, who's very proactive, and it's good that she's working to go. Chris, a question. You have an intersection list that you're working on with EDOT and TPO. Do you have a list that you keep?
No, not enough. No. We did work with TDOT for their highway safety improvement program and how to prioritize corridors and intersections, and they're using that information and data to direct some of their funding across the state. It's really a tricky thing with pedestrians, for example, is you see that map, imagine it for the whole state, for every city, and you're TDOT, and you've got to invest in some of these corridors. And the TDOT's trying to figure out now how to tackle the rising pedestrian crash rates that have been going up for the last couple of years and across the country, but especially Tennessee's no exception. Hopefully we'll be part of a study that looks at kind of ways to address that beyond just looking at counts and just getting to that proactive point.
I have a question for Brian. You said that 25% pedestrian and bicycle deaths are children.
No, nearly 1 in 5.
1 in 5.
Nearly 1 in 5. I believe it was like 18% or something like that.
I don't want to throw them out there, but I bet they would save up more questions if you have individual stuff.
Absolutely.
But again, thank you so much. Y'all have a great weekend.